Oliver? Stay still. All right, you want to prompt him with a question?
Sure. Okay, so your parents are immigrants.
Absolutely.
They came here to America. Tell me a little bit about them.
My parents migrated here in the late 70s. And to be sincere, I always said that life is about three things, right? It's about preparations, it's our words, and it's really the light that everyone has. And what I mean by that is my preparation began at the hands of my parents, in which case my preparation is really infused with our culture. And so my dad was a jeweler. My father was very successful, very young. By the time he was 25, he bought property, he invested in land, and my mother was an educator. And so subsequently, they come from two socioeconomic classes. My father was really well off very young. And my mother, who was the son of a farmer, they had a lot of land but no capital. And so the dynamic there is, in Haiti, there's no racism, but there's classism, and people base or judge you in courtesy of how fair your skin is in comparison to someone else's, or how much money your family has in comparison to someone else's. So my dad being a jeweler, but being very dark in complexion, and my mother coming from a poor family of farmers, but she was very fair in complexion, gave them a very interesting dynamic of preparation. And so they fell in love. They had my older sister, and then my father migrated here with a trade. He was a jeweler, and that was his thing. And so coming to the United States, my father realized several things. Obviously, the culture was different than what he was exposed to. My father didn't have any experience with racism. He only knew that when he came here because there was different types of people. And so it was huge exposure. And he was a jeweler here for a short period of time, and I think he fell out of love with his passion. I think what happened, the sacrifices he had to make in order to provide for family, because the economy was thus different than what it was back home. And he had to really be able to swallow pride. He had to really understand he was the big fish in a small pond back home, and now he was the tiniest fish in the largest ocean. And he really made huge sacrifices. My father became a porter. He was a janitor at NYU Medical, and my mom became a housekeeper at Best Western. So what they've instilled in me in terms of perseverance, and although they've made huge sacrifices, they had a great level of pride to provide and have a home and let us always have food on the table and a roof over our heads. So although, you know, we're from another culture, the value stuck. And that value of perseverance, the sense of understanding that you have to work hard and earn everything that you want. And they refuse to keep their head down and their arm out. You know, my parents came here, much like many people who migrate from another country, didn't speak the language, didn't understand the culture, didn't grasp the understanding of credit and building credit. And within 5 years, my family, let's say 7 years, they were homeowners. You know, you came from a small island called Haiti, and the furthest point west in Haiti, which is Jérémie, to come so far, to leave everything you understood, all your friends, everything you were comfortable with, your community, your life, in chasing opportunity. And in seeing that within them, I knew most solemnly that I couldn't waste myself. You know, I didn't want to minimalize their accomplishments. I wanted to chase, I wanted to pursue, I wanted to attain, but I really wanted to make them proud. I wanted them to see that I recognized their efforts. My mother, being an educator, was so passionate about education. And my father, being an artisan, understood that there's various types of education. So if it's going to be school, be your best at it. If you're going to learn a trade, be your absolute best at it. And that came with no excuses. I couldn't come home and say it's because it was hard that I couldn't. That was, how hard must it have been for them to leave something that they've known to come here and then learn it, adapt it, capitalize, build, and provide for those who came after you. You know, my godmother came first. She then sent for my uncle. My uncle sent for my father. My father sent for his brothers. It was, we all understood this. You know, one hand would wash the other, both hands would wash the face, and thus our unit, our family became stronger. all communities, family is a sincere hub for that community. And it really starts on the smallest scale. And my parents really, really showed me that. My parents really gave me a good understanding of how community works from the most intimate level, which is in the home. And so I understood that. And if I could ever, everything that I am, I attribute to what my parents has instilled in me. And yeah.
So they faced a lot of struggles coming here to the U.S.
Absolutely. Where we're from, in comparison to our democracy in the United States, I have an uncle who was executed in front of his home for everyone to see. And this is under a different regime. So just like every culture and every people has a challenge, their challenges in terms of politics, you had no option. For quite some time, it was understand this regime or we'd make an example out of you. So there's not much room to be able to express a voice without a level of fear. There is no room for you to describe what voting would be. What are you voting in what? So, and them coming to the United States, it's very different. You know, you have so much opportunity and it could be overwhelming. You have so much options, it could be overwhelming, especially if you've been told for so long you have none. And so it was extremely difficult for them to leave something that they understood to adapt something different and then saying, we can participate in this. I want to be an American, I'm gonna vote. And both of them getting naturalized. And that was huge. I went to the ceremony, I see my father get sworn in. It meant a great deal for me to see my parents come from so much. They had to constantly achieve, they had to constantly overcome, they had to constantly set examples and not make a single excuse about that. And so growing up now in adulthood, I realized how difficult that was. As a kid, it didn't mean much to me. Had a house. You know, back then we had a TV that was encased in wood. That was the biggest thing. So I had a TV. I was the remote, so I had to go up and change the channel, and we didn't have cable. So it was very basic. But for me then, I felt that I had the world. My parents gave me a lot of things. It wasn't until life gets challenging. Unfortunately, they divorced after 17 years. My life subsequently changed. And then I had to make of myself with all the tools that they gave me, which was so difficult in the beginning. It was making excuses. It was saying, well, if my parents did this, or if my parents were still together, or if we had this type of lifestyle, if I had this amount of money. And I grew tired of making those excuses. I realized I didn't want to depend on anyone. I didn't want to wait for anyone. I didn't want a handout from anyone. My father told me this and it stuck. He said, what will last, and what won't. And it was very simple. It was, if you work hard to have something that's worth having, it will serve the rest of your life. And if you don't work hard, if you don't have that sense of discipline, if you don't do things to earn things that are lasting, then you're never going to have anything worth having. And so that carried out throughout the most of my life. When, in 2003, I walked into college for the first time. I didn't have 2 nickels to rub together. Didn't have a college fund. Barely understood how to fill out a financial aid application. And my father and I, we went and sat with an advisor, and we looked at the money that they were asking for me to learn, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we clearly were thinking the same thing, but it didn't intimidate me. If my parents could come and not even speak the language of a country, and then purchase a home and pay a mortgage, I can go to school. I'll figure it out. And lo and behold, that's how it started. So I walk into college, I would remember going to class, and if your funds weren't paid up, I went to a private school, they would leave a slip with your professor that said you can't come back to class until this is paid off in full. And so just imagine that dynamic. I'm 18, 19 years old. I'm going to school, I'm taking myself and my life seriously. I wanted to be an engineer so bad, and the closest program they had towards engineering was networking and computer technology, and that's what I took. And so I got my associates in about 2.5 years. I took a semester off, saved up enough money to get my bachelor's, and then I went to SUNY College at Old Westbury, and some of these technical courses didn't transfer over because I fell in love with business. I lost 30 credits of about 60 credits. And so once again, it brings me back full circle. If my parents could come to this place with not much, not speaking the language, not adapting to the culture, I'm not going to intimidate at this because I want to have what's worth lasting. And to me, it was that simple. So I was very fortunate to work for great organizations. At this time, I worked with FedEx Kinko's. I had the second largest account in the Northeast, which was North Shore LIJ Health Systems. I was a senior consultant with them. I would go and speak to high-level admins. I would find out and work with our counterparts with Xerox to see how we can save the health system as much money as possible. We would train them on how to properly use machines. And I said, I can do this. I like doing this. I'm on a conference call every morning with the vice president of procurement. His name was Gary Leonard, and he wants to know what's going on in the field. So I understood a hierarchy. I respected that hierarchy, and I respected my position contributing to that hierarchy. I didn't want to just be someone, I didn't want to be an employee. I wanted to be a contributor. I looked at it as if I worked for myself underneath this umbrella. And I did that, got promoted in 8 months to account executive. They fly me to Texas for trainings. I'm the only one of my friends at this point who's doing this. I'm 20 years old. I just transferred to go get my bachelor's, so I'm a transfer freshman. I had about 28 credits underneath my belt, but I was in a freshman transfer building. So none of them were doing any of these things. And so it served the resilience that my parents offered me, landed me in these different types of settings, and now it's showing me the proof, it's showing me the fruits of my labor, it's showing me what I can become with the rest of my life. So I really pushed that envelope. I left FedEx Kinko's. I ended up working with Verizon Wireless, another great company to work for. They gave me tuition reimbursement. I did very well in sales. I would lead the zone some months, and it was competitive. They gave me an opportunity to earn a salary plus commissions, and you wanted to outshine every sales rep. We used to have this thing, it would be a board with all your numbers on it. And I'll never forget this month. I started off real aggressive. Day 2, I had like 9 new activations, and a quota was 30. So at a 30 new activation quota with 22 work days in a month, because you got to get 2 days off, you realize at 1.2, one number and a little bit extra, I'll hit the quota at the end of the month. So if I shoot for 3 a day, I'll do 3 times that. And that's how I looked at it. So I started off real aggressive. I had 9 in the first day, and then I had 2 days off consecutively. When I came back to work, I looked at the board. My colleague had 17. I still had my 9, and everybody had like 4 or 5. You know, they were pacing to hit their quota, but he hit it real aggressive. He was already halfway through, and we're 3 or 4 days into quota. And I said, look, my business this month, I'm gonna make sure you don't pass me. That's given. You're not gonna pass me this month. And we would, you know, it's competitive, it's sales. So I said, not only are you not gonna pass me, I'm gonna triple the numbers you get by next week. Half the time I was just, you know, BSing. Who knows what I was gonna hit? But I wanted to approach it that aggressively. So I would come into work pumped up half an hour earlier, and I would go beat on his desk. The champ is here, and we would do it all the time. We had great fun with this. And at the end of that week, I had 15. And he had about 18, 19. I said, no way, I'm coming. By the next week, I had 27. So we're 2 weeks in, I'm 3 numbers away from hitting quota. Every single day from that point forward, I was hitting a multiplier. And then the zone recognizes this because your numbers, your sales code, my sales code was EHU09. And I'm looking at EHU09 climb. I'm looking at EHU09 climb. I'm looking at the multiplier that comes with it. I'm looking at the revenues that come with it. I'm getting an email from district managers asking me, what techniques are you doing? What's going on with you this month? And there's something about when you build a momentum. There's something really interesting that happens. You immediately lose fear. Fear doesn't exist at this point because you're already proving that you've already gone past the anxiety of not achieving. Imagine what it was coming back from 2 days being off and having your colleague excel this far. And then now you've already blew past them, and people are showing you how much they appreciate this. And I really appreciated that sense of culture. So if I can sell cell phones, if I can be a senior consultant at 20 years old getting promoted to account executive, I can start my own business. So by the time I graduated college, it took me some 10 years to get a 4-year degree. And I'll never forget this. By the time I got my diploma, they didn't say when I started, it only shows when I ended. But I finished. So it's a huge piece of myself that I dedicate to my parents and recognizing their accomplishments and their struggles. And I don't think anybody likes everything their parents do, but we respect a lot of the things our parents do. And I really respected that, and it has hazed me into everything else that I've done so far. Yeah.
That's great. adjust something. Stay still.
Sure. Drink some water. How's that phone working out for you, Francois?
The real phone? Working well.